The following is a presentation of the Mat Talk Podcast Network.
You've always got time for short time.
Hey, it's Mario Lopez.
David Taylor.
Brent MacKay. Johnny Hendricks. Tony Ramos. Bubba J.
Mike Golick.
Matthew Modine. The one and only Chael Sonnen. And you are listening to the one and only Short Time Wrestling Podcast by the often imitated and never duplicated Jason Bryant.
It is day one of Cadet Greco here in the Fargo Dome in Fargo, North Dakota. This is the Short Time Wrestling Podcast, episode 272. Yes, folks, I made it. My daughter is alive and kicking, doing great. She's crying, she's screaming. I mentioned this on the last episode. But, yep, made the trip. Unfortunately, had to miss the first day of competition. That was the Cadet Girls Tournament, or the Cadet Women. And good. I did have a chance to watch some of those finals on Flow Wrestling, so I didn't completely get shut out of competition on Saturday. But Sunday, day two of competition, day one of Cadet Greco. Today, going to do a short episode. Talked with Rob Prebish, Greco-Roman coach and media director for Virginia USA Wrestling, and also had a chance to talk with Rod Gaddy from Alabama, the Alabama man. And finally had a chance to talk with Lee MacKay from our neighbors to the north, Canada. He is a Canadian wrestling official and instructor down here working as young officials are working on getting their upgrades through various levels of United World Wrestling officiating. So domestic event, we get some international officials here. Lee MacKay will explain what his role is, how wrestling is like in Canada, as we've talked about on this program numerous times before, but he'll give his perspective, how he expects Team Canada to see, and some of the differences between the age group levels in Canada. So that's what we got here on episode 272 of the Short Time Wrestling Podcast. We are from Fargo all week long. Hashtag Fargo 2016. One of the many personalities we encounter here on the floor of the Fargo Dome is Greco Moses, the Hebrew Hammer himself, Rob Prebish. Rob, just like 15, 16 years you've been out here coaching with Team Virginia, a couple other places. What is it about the Dome that just gets you, like, to make you grow another 2 inches?
Well, this is the Greco tournament, starting today. And for me, this is like Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's, Passover, Easter, all rolled into one big happy day. This is what I live for, 364 days out of the year is for day one of Greco. It's just, I don't know, there's something about this place that you look forward to, and everyone's so friendly. The wrestling's great. It's just a great atmosphere for wrestling.
Look at the cadet numbers. The numbers have gone up each of the last 7 years since we were at least tracking them on Track Wrestling. What do you attribute to the rise in participants in Greco-Roman at the junior and cadet levels, whereas a couple years ago we were barely over 700, now we're over 900. Do you attribute that to some of the rules or the coaching? I mean, what's the difference here?
I think with the rule changes back to more traditional Greco has helped, as well as more coaches getting involved, pushing wrestling in the off-season, and beginning to understand that Greco is extremely important to folk-style wrestling, maintaining position, hand-fighting skills, being able to score from any position, hold position. They see the importance of it, and I think we need to continue to expand that.
One thing that was interesting, I was looking through the stats on the Olympians. Well, the only double champion in both styles in Fargo that's on the U.S. Olympic team is a guy named Robbie Smith in Greco-Roman.
You got to love Robbie Smith. You got to love the beard. He's one of the most popular athletes, not just in the United States Greco community, but worldwide. The Iranians love him. He's so enthusiastic. He's a great ambassador for the sport. Both he and Andy Bizik are just doing amazing things for Greco, helping to show that it is important, it is relevant.
What do you say about coaches like you? I mean, as far as Greco specialists, granted you do coach at the high school level, but when you get into the off season, it's Greco. Yeah, you know the freestyle, you know the leg touching, but to get a coach to be passionate about Greco and to teach kids Greco, where does that come from? How are you wired for that?
Well, I think it comes from my own personal experience as an athlete. I found that I was much, much better at Greco, and it was something something about being able to back arch somebody for 5 multiple times as quick as you can, that just like it was the light switch moment. And I bring that passion, that enthusiasm to the room when I'm showing technique. I make it fun for the kids so they don't feel like it's a grind kind of practice. I make it interesting and entertaining. If they're having fun, I'm having fun. That's what it's about.
Now, not to bring up your own career too much, but you do have a notable win in your arsenal from the early years of the Cadet Greco-Roman tournament. Beat some guy named Kerry Colat. Talk about that series a little bit.
Well, we wrestled in the state finals in Greco, and he beat me like 12-5, and he's a machine. When people ask me what's it like to wrestle Kerry, it's like trying to sprint a marathon. That's how hard his pace was. But, after that match, I trained believing that I could beat him and focused on that match. And, by the grace of God, I somehow pulled out the win in the last 10 seconds. But I tell you what, Kerry Colat is a phenomenal wrestler, a phenomenal coach. 99 out of 100 times, I don't smell it in the match. I got very, very lucky and very fortunate. And I thank God for that moment because, it was on my side. But it wasn't anything special. It was just I got very lucky.
You've also had the opportunity to share in some stories and some trips of one Ray Brinzer who showed up on the Short Time Wrestling podcast not that long ago. Let's just give 1 or 2 quick Brinzer stories on the road and rooming with Ray Brinzer.
Well, I'll tell you what, a couple years ago, he calls me up. It's after Fargo. He's on the way down to Hilton Head with his family. And he calls me and he's like, "Hey, Rob, Richmond is about halfway between New York City and Hilton Head." And I interrupted him. I said, "Yes, you can stay at my apartment." He's like, "Oh, good. We'll be there in about 3 hours." Well, this is about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. 3 hours passes, no Ray. 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, it's now midnight. "Hey, I'm lost in Richmond. Where do you live?" So I had to give him directions. His kids were dead tired, and he wanted to stay up talking all night. I said, "No, Ray, I'm going to bed." Next morning we just caught up on our lives. I was one of the few guys in Pennsylvania that enjoyed rooming with him because he was on such a higher intellectual level, and I guess apparently I was too, because we could talk about things that the other kids on our team would look at us like, why are they talking Buddhist philosophy? Why are they talking about economics? Why don't they just talk about rock and roll music and the girls we want to date?
Well, you also, because your dad has the background in all the various, the religious philosophies and such, so you actually had something that your dad dealt with that you're just like, "Hey, I knew Dad talks about this. Hey, Ray, what do you know about this?"
Well, no, Ray started asking me questions, and then when I didn't know the answers, if he was at my house, would go to my dad, and of course would annoy my father for about 2 hours till he would call me into the room like, "All right, you and Ray got to go."
All right, and we've been roommates here before, back in my Team Virginia days, and when we look at this and talk about where Fargo's been, we've got now 7 tournaments. You got the 2 girls tournaments plus the junior duels. Then you got the 2 styles per each age group. This tournament is just, it's a homecoming, it's a family. But what's it mean to you to come back here every year and see chuckleheads like me and others?
It's a family reunion. There are people here that were officiating and coaching way back in the day when I was a little kid, maybe 2 inches shorter than I am now. But it's great to catch up with all those people that you've connected with over the years and have built friendships out here. It's the only place where you can throw a bunch of wrestlers together and we all get along. It's a week-long, almost borderline fraternity party, and it feels like home.
Now here on the floor of the Fargo Dome, day 1 of Cadet Greco with Alabama man Rod Gaddy. Rod, another great year, another trip up to Fargo. You'd said before we got rolling this tournament, you expected a good performance from your Alabama Greco-Roman wrestlers, and what are you expecting here in the early going? What have you seen?
Our guys are looking good. They're fighting hard. There's a lot of really good kids in Alabama, a lot of good coaches. We used to come up here 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. It'd be 1 coach, maybe 2, and a handful of kids, and now we got a lot of really good clubs represented and some really good coaches. So I'm really glad to see that. That's what it takes to get our state to go to the next level is have a bunch of competitive clubs competing against each other in our state.
You know, you look at the wrestling down south, obviously Florida's kind of carried the banner and how good they've been at both Greco-Roman and freestyle, and a good state organization. Georgia made a run there and has had some really good kids, but a couple years ago, people started noticing, even people from Georgia were like, wait a minute, these Alabama kids, you might bring 15 kids, but you're placing a higher percentage of them. What do you attribute to that success, getting kids in a state that's football crazy to get them to care about wrestling and to get them to care about Greco-Roman and freestyle wrestling?
Well, the thing is, I mean, those years, I didn't really have to get those kids to do anything to buy in. They were just great kids, and they were bought in already. You know, they loved wrestling. They loved training. They'd give up their whole summer for one tournament, you know, and it's easy to be a good coach when you got good, dedicated kids with good parents that support them and, you know, willing to do whatever it takes to get them out here. But, you know, I'd say the biggest change from years past would be our training camp. You know, we have a 30-day training camp. These kids are training 2-3 times a day for 30 days, essentially, with a couple of days off to recover in there. And I think really what kind of gave me the idea was, you know, we trained 3.5 months to win a state title. Why not train 1 month to try and win a national title? And, you know, when we got our kids focused and got them in there doing the reps and getting all the best kids together, battling with each other, that's when things started turning around. I mean, we went from like 5 All-Americans in 15 years to like 6 All-Americans the first year we did that. And then the next year I think we had 7 or something. And so, you know, here we are 40-something All-Americans later, and you know, hopefully we'll get up on top of 50 this year.
It was I think there was a Facebook discussion. I think we were 42 going into this year.
I think that's right. All cadet, junior, and women, Greco and freestyle. I think we're at 42. So, yep.
I just talked to Rob Prebish about this tournament, and you're one of the guys that I met out here. I mean, if it wasn't for this tournament, I mean, we probably would have crossed paths somewhere at some wrestling tournament, but this really is the crossroads of wrestling for coaches that are coming out of, you know, they're out of high school wrestling, now they're in college, they're coaching, and then their older coaches are getting involved in the sport. This is really where the meeting of the minds happens. And what has it been about this tournament in Fargo, the city, that's really kind of helped your career and helped you as an educator of children and kids?
Well, this tournament's really special to me personally because when I wrestled in it, I wasn't very good. And I was like 2-2, and I remember a guy named Sean Haig, who's 6-timer, you know, he tied the record for most titles in this tournament. And he was wrestling in the finals, and I came down to, like, stand and watch or whatever. And when security stopped me, they said, "What state?" And I said, "Alabama." And they looked at their sheet and they said, "Nope, there's no one from Alabama here in the finals. You're going to have to go back up in the stands." And, you know, that walk probably only took 20 seconds, but it seemed like 2 hours. It was like the saddest time in my life. So fast forward, when I was done with college, you know, and I started coaching in Alabama, you know, I said, I really want to change that because it was pretty clear to me that day there was 2 types of people. There was the people on the floor and the people that weren't. And at that time, I was one of the people that weren't. I was in the stands, and that's who I was. And I wanted our kids in Alabama to have the opportunity to not be that, you know, to be the kind of kid that can be on the floor. And so that's kind of what's driven me. That's what's made it my passion, and that's why I love it. And that's why, you know, we come back every year. And it's so great because it really makes kids so much better. It opens doors for them. They end up going to colleges that, you know, they may not have an opportunity to go to had they not come here and done well. And really just the whole experience. I mean, making the sacrifice, coming up here, seeing where you are at the biggest tournament in the world and the toughest tournament in the country, in my opinion. So it's just awesome. I mean, just to see it be a tool to change these young boys' lives, turn them into men, is just outstanding. I just love it.
Of course, there's the camaraderie that comes along with all of this. I mean, you see people every year. It becomes a big family reunion. And when you come here as an adult, bringing kids, and you get to kick back and sit down and have some wings or something, I mean, when you realize, man, we're in Fargo. We get to spend 8 days here, some of us longer. Some of us live a little closer than we used to. You're down south. I'm actually just 3 hours away now. But when you come here, it's like it's just like old times, right?
Yeah, I mean, wrestling's not a sport. I mean, it's a fraternity of brothers. And even guys that are, you know, beating the crap out of us, or guys that we're getting on top of. I mean, we still all love each other and get along, and that's what's so great about it, you know. I mean, I've got friends that I've competed against as a wrestler, and you know, now they're coaching. I compete against them as a coach, and it's fierce and it's competitive, and but we're still all good buddies. Like you said, after it's over, we go out and have, some sodas or whatever, and, and some wings, and we talk about wrestling, and, it's just great. I mean, it's like you said, it's like a family reunion. You grow, you kind of keep going. I mean, this is my 13th year now. And so, I mean, my son wasn't even alive when, I first came up here. And, I've got friends from all over the country that we see every year. And we kind of mark it on our calendar. We're excited about it. 2 weeks out, we start texting each other. Where are you staying? What are you doing? You got any good kids? All that stuff. So, yeah, like I said, it's not just the competition. I mean, that's obviously first and foremost, but it's the whole experience, for the kids and the coaches and the pairers and the team leaders and everybody. So,
who's the one kid we really need to keep an eye on from Alabama this year, regardless of style and age?
I would say there's 3, but if you got to make me pick one, I would say Sam Latona. He's 88 cadet, and a kid can wrestle, buddy. His brother just committed to Virginia Tech, signed with Virginia Tech. He graduated as a senior national All-American, really tough kid, and I think his little brother's probably better. I don't train him. He wrestles at Warrior Wrestling Club, but the kid's really good. He's been really good for a long time. He was a Southeastern Regional champion in freestyle, and if I had to pick one of the 25 that, in my opinion, if you could say, which you never can here, but if you could say is a surefire stand guy, I'd probably say him. But look, there's 4 or 5 guys that are, in my opinion, right there to get on the stand. So,
Alabama man, Rod Gaddy. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Now here in Fargo, which is a border state in that country that is above the 49th parallel. In case you're wondering what the 49th parallel is, it's what separates the United States and Canada. Lee MacKay, longtime wrestling official from the Great White North in Canada, down here observing. And actually, Lee, I'll just put it in your words. What are you doing here in Fargo?
Well, I'm here as an instructor assigned by United World Wrestling. So I'm here to evaluate the referees and make comments on what they're doing on the mat, make comments to them, try to help the referees here get better. And I'm assisting Zach Garrett from the USA in that capacity.
And this is an event that numerous international officials have come through, especially now that the rules are more in line with the United World Wrestling rules. There's a gap year or two where things weren't quite jiving with what we were doing here in the United States. But when you get officials to come from overseas to any type of international competition to work on upgrades, to work on their technique and refinement, how much of pressure is that on you as an instructor to make sure that, okay, let's get the spirit of the rule here versus necessarily what really my opinion is?
Well, I don't find it a lot of pressure for me. One of the things that we try to make sure that everyone understands, especially the referees understand, is that the most important people here are the athletes. And especially at this age group, with the young athletes, we want them to continue in the sport and to continue getting better. So we want to make sure the rules work for them.
Now, the United States in this event affords a tremendous opportunity. You get a week. Most international tournaments at this age group level, you're getting a couple mats. You're not getting this much mat time. How much does an event like this at USA Wrestling at the Junior and Cadet Nationals helps United World Wrestling and the pool of officials to get these upgrades, to get that notice that they need, to get the instruction?
Well, because it's a domestic event, it probably doesn't have that much effect. Internationally, I'm the only one that's seeing them here. So they still need to get somewhere else, in a different country, preferably Europe, to have someone notice them there, so they can get recognized there and identified and promoted in that area.
Now, let's just talk about the similarities and the differences. Up in Canada, there is no collegiate style. Matter of fact, the collegiate style in Canada is freestyle. So what we say is folk style here that really doesn't exist, save, that school out in British Columbia, Simon Fraser, which wrestles Division II. But when you look at the comparisons between the depth and just the style of competition here in the United States compared to Canada, what are some things that Canada does really, really well that you think the United States could borrow from and vice versa?
Well, and I don't want to step on the toes of the people who do the folk style. They're doing a great job. But my feeling is that if the U.S. wrestled freestyle right from when they were little kids all the way through, they would be that much better internationally at the senior level.
And I think we've kind of seen that with Canada with the women, because there's been college programs and both men and women in Canada for a number of years, and you're wrestling freestyle, and we're seeing the Canadian women pretty much excel through the CIS and then on into the high impact programs. But now you're seeing that second wave. You know, the Tonya Verbeeks are gone, the Carol Winds are gone. Now you're seeing another group coming through. And as far as the women goes, freestyle only seems to have really made Canada a world power.
I think so. I think that as they start young, when they start as kids wrestling, they've already, when they get to be at the junior level or the senior level, they've already had all that experience at freestyle. And I think the U.S. is in the same boat because they don't have so many collegiate women's teams, and the women are wrestling more freestyle. And you see the women's program in the U.S. Is one of the strongest in the world.
And when we get back to the differences between you, our friends north of the border, and then us, actually, I'm in a border state too, so basically I'm South Canadian, or at least my mother-in-law sounds like it. When we look at the competition, and you see 18,000 people at Madison Square Garden for the NCAA Division I Wrestling Championships, and what are some things that you really wish that maybe even your own countrymen would be like, hey, we need to maybe support our wrestling more so? I mean, and the thing is, in the U.S., we're not even like the top 5, top 10 sports like people watch, and we're still getting huge crowds. I mean, what's the push to maybe get more of a presence on wrestling and having it being a focal point of Canadian wrestling culture, Canadian culture?
Well, I think it needs to be promoted way better. The U.S. does such a great job of promoting it. And the parents and the relatives and friends get involved in the activities. So it's exciting to come to a world championship at Madison Square Garden and see the stands full, or go to a country like Turkey or Iran where it's a national sport, and you go to a 10 or 12,000 person arena, and it's jam-packed. They're sitting in the aisles. It's exciting. And then you in Canada normally doesn't have anything like that. We have a national championship, and the stand are full mostly by competitors and a few friends.
So as we approach Rio, we've got the Olympic Games in this side of the world, at least, in the time zone-wise. How much do you think that's going to help the Pan American athletes? Because typically we saw the World Championships in Vegas. The United States did extremely well there. Canadian women have done very well now. Hyslin Garcia's on the team with men's freestyle and Corey Jarvis. The entire Canadian women's team is qualified. When you look at the Olympic hopes for Canada, what are you thinking the best case scenario is for Team Canada down in Rio this year?
Well, I think that our women have a very close relationship with the American women's team. The coaches are good friends. The athletes are good friends. And there's some they do just some training together. I think having the Olympic Games in this hemisphere has done a tremendous amount for the Central American and the South American countries. And you can see how much effort and how much money they've put into their programs to build them up. And all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, but over a period of time, the playing field has leveled out. So it used to be the Cubans, the Americans, and the Canadians, and maybe the odd Venezuelan, and were the top. Who might have been a Cuban to start with. Now that's leveled out quite a bit, and especially at the female level, the women at the international level from South America, Central America, have come leaps and bounds. So having the Olympics in this part of the hemisphere, has done a tremendous amount for those countries.
All right, so circling things back around Fargo, what do you like about Fargo? What do you like about coming here to this event? 23 rings, 23 mats, man, 23 ring circus. This is mind-boggling for people who have not seen it.
This is huge. And it's a great event. It's such a great job. You do such a great job running this event with this many mats. It's phenomenal. I grew up just north of Minot in Saskatchewan, so I love this country. This is God's country for me. And I've waited for years. I wanted to come here for years just to see this setup, 23 mats. We don't have anything like this in Canada, and I think it's just a phenomenal job of running a tournament of this size so smoothly and so quickly.
Just like Alabama Man.
Alabama Man comes with everything you see here, wife, so Tipperley.
I thought I told you to shut up.
This show is part of the Matt Talk Podcast Network.
For more wrestling podcasts, head over to MattTalkOnline.com.